So yesterday in Australia was Anzac Day, and for those that are not Australian or New Zealanders, Anzac stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps. Anzac Day is commemorated on April 25th because on that day in 1915, Australian and New Zealand forces landed in Gallipoli. The aim of that campaign was to knock Turkey out of the war. However, it ended up being a stalemate, dragging on for 8 months and resulted in the loss of 8,000 Australian lives. Today, Anzac Day is a national day of remembrance that commemorates all Australian and New Zealanders who served and died in all wars, conflicts and peacekeeping operations. And there are all kinds of customs associated with the day. There are dawn services, there are marches, memorial services, and if you go down to your local RSL club, you might be able to participate in a game of two-up. Also, a pivotal part of commemorative services is the utterance of the phrase, "lest we forget," to remind us that if we forget the sacrifice of those who died in war, we're likely to repeat the futility and obscenity of armed conflict. But of course, there are some that, despite enjoying all the freedoms and privileges built on the back of those that made the ultimate sacrifice, that feel the need to disparage the message and push their own political agenda. And surprise, surprise, that the ABC's most prominent celebrity Muslim would be one of those to take that opportunity. So in the spirit of the occasion, she put up this on her Facebook account. "Lest we forget, Manus, Nauru, Syria, Palestine." And after getting quite a hostile reaction, she then changed it to this, with this little apology. "It was brought to my attention that my last post was disrespectful, and for that I apologise unreservedly." Well, if that had to be brought to your attention, then there's something wrong with your judgment. And I'm not buying it. This is disingenuous at best. I think this poster summed up the sentiment. No shit, it was disrespectful. How'd you expect people to take it? Don't try and hide behind your words. You clearly said it with malicious intent. And I think that's right. She can't claim ignorance of the historical significance of Anzac Day, given that she boasts in her Department of Foreign Affairs website profile that she served as a member of the Federal Anzac Centenary Commemoration Youth Working Group. No, I think she's being deliberately inflammatory. She's well known for playing identity politics any chance she gets. This is the same self-absorbed individual that famously stormed out of Lionel Shriver's keynote address at the Brisbane Writers' Festival in 2016 because Shriver dared to say that she hoped the idea of cultural appropriation was just a passing fad. McGee wrote of the incident, "It's not always okay if a white guy writes the story of a Nigerian woman because the actual Nigerian woman can't get published or reviewed to begin with. It's not always okay if a straight white woman writes the story of a queer Indigenous man, because when was the last time you heard a queer Indigenous man tell his own story? How is it that said straight white woman will profit from an experience that is not hers, and those with the actual experience never be provided the opportunity?" So you see, now you can't write a character unless you are that character. So women can't write male characters and gays can't write straight characters. Better tell Chuck Palahniuk or Bret Easton Ellis. Well, perhaps the Nigerian woman couldn't write her own book, since about half of all Nigerian women are illiterate, or maybe they have more important things to worry about than writing a memoir. Look, if I want to write a work of fiction in the first person of a black, demi-queer, gender-fluid brony, I can, and I don't need the permission of cultural dietitians like McGee. But listen to McGee describe the moment she got up and walked out of the speech. "As I stood up, my heart began to race. I could feel the eyes of the hundreds of audience members on my back, questioning, querying, judging. I turned to face the crowd, lifted up my chin and walked down the main aisle, my pace deliberate. Look back into the audience, a friend had texted me moments earlier, and let them see your face. The faces around me blurred as my heels thudded against the grey plastic of the flooring, harmonising with the beat of the adrenaline pumping through my veins." So this is all about her fee-fees. She couldn't listen to the speech, then respectfully raise her hand and challenge the writer at the end like an adult. She had to throw a tantrum and let everyone know about it. And as is par for the course with McGee when writing anything, she can't help but expose her resentment and disdain for white people. But there is a bigger and broader issue, one that for me is more emotive. Cultural appropriation is a thing because of our histories, the history of colonisation, where everything was taken from a people the world over. Land, wealth, dignity, and now identity is to be taken as well. And what has been taken from you exactly? Raised in Australia, given a taxpayer-funded job for being a celebrity Muslim, flown around the world on the taxpayer's dime. Talk about identity privilege. A privilege that people died for so that you could be ungrateful. In making light of the need to hold on to any vestige of identity, Shriver completely disregards not only history, but current reality. The reality is that those from marginalised groups, even today, do not get the luxury of defining their own place in a norm that is profoundly white, straight, and often patriarchal. And in demanding that the right to identity should be given up, Shriver epitomised the kind of attitude that led to the normalisation of imperialist colonial rule. I want this, and therefore I shall take it. Well, you've done nothing but ram your identity down other people's throats every chance you get, and all done at taxpayers' expense. The attitude drips of racial supremacy, and the implication is clear. I don't care what you deem as important or sacred. I want to do with it what I will. Your experience is simply a tool for me to use because you are less human than me. You are less than human. That was the message I received loud and clear. Yes, that is the message that you chose to tell yourself because it fits your politics. But your interpretation of other people's words doesn't equal truth. You can't use your emotions to treat the words of others as your own personal Rorschach test and pretend you've made some objective observation. This always boils down to the same formula. You can't say things I disagree with because feelings. But if you're not convinced of McGead's overt racism, how about the fact that, as Mark Latham reported, she attacked her hometown of Brisbane for being as white as... yeah. Just imagine a white male media personality making an observation in downtown Brisbane like, what's with all the effing headscarves? You know what would happen? He'd be forced to resign the next day. And remember her performance recently when she came out on national TV and educated us all on how Islam was the most feminist religion. And when she copped criticism for her views, who'd she turn to for advice? A member of the Islamist group Hizb ut-Tahrir, the same group that wants to install a global caliphate and at a recent meeting in Sydney confirmed their policy for dealing with apostates is death.
The ruling of apostasy in Islam is clear. Again, that's one of the things the West doesn't like, and so it seeks to change. The ruling of apostasy as such in Islam is clear, that apostates do attract capital punishment. We don't shy away from that, we don't shy away from saying that.
Oh, and recently, their cute little video condoning wife beating. That's the kind of counsel McGead keeps. Latham noted today, when will the ABC SBS acknowledge that Yassmin Abdel-Magid is not a moderate, left-wing radical like Waleed Ali? ABC SBS has no moderate Muslims. Well, our Prime Minister disagrees. That's why he invites those moderate Muslims for dinner round at his place. Now, she's been widely denounced by Liberal politicians, and there's a petition calling for McGead's sacking at the ABC that has garnered over 17,000 signatures. And the ABC's response? An ABC spokeswoman said Abdel-Magid was required to adhere to ABC policies only when presenting for the ABC. Ms Abdel-Magid is a part-time presenter on the ABC program Australia-wide, introducing stories done by ABC reporters from around the country, the spokeswoman said. Ms Magid is also engaged in a range of other activities and work that is not related to the ABC. Her views and opinions in that capacity are her own and do not represent those of the ABC. Abdel-Magid did not respond to a request for comment. Well, of course she didn't, because she's a coward. And the response from the ABC is a little odd. On the one hand, they seem to be distancing themselves from her comments, but on the other, they have taken the position that they won't sack her because she's part-time. And what does that have to do with it? Are you saying you would have fired her if she worked full-time for the ABC? Personally, I'm not calling for her sacking. She has a right to air her opinions as a private citizen, just like everyone else. But if this is the face of cultural diversity promoted by our national broadcaster and funded by taxpayer money, then that type of cultural diversity is sure to fail. Perhaps the best rebuke came from Graham Richardson, a prominent lefty in his day, but certainly someone that displays a lot more rationality than today's left.
I didn't get a chance to comment on the ABC presenter either, by the way.
Yeah.
I find what happened with her pathetic. And the ABC must do something about this sooner or later. In the end, either they try and pretend it's okay, or they simply ignore it totally. It's not good enough. And at some point, because they are Australians at the ABC after all, it's the Australian Broadcasting Commission, and it's got to start to act like it. It hasn't for a long, long time.
Remember, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, or consider supporting the channel via Patreon. See you next time.